CIOs define IT modernization in a number of ways, but essentially it's looking at IT rather than as a series of vertical projects, as a singular horizontal view of the entire environment. CIOs have realized that the drive to become agile, to create an agile IT environment where they can react quickly to business, install new applications, new technologies based on business demands is a good thing. It's what business has been demanding for the last 15 years. But it's a bad thing because the more tactical installations we do that aren't focused on the entire infrastructure, the more complex the environment becomes and the more difficult it becomes to manage. One CIO I talked to recently likened it to a series of dominoes. All the dominoes could stand independently, but if any domino fell over, it would knock 10 or 15 other dominoes over. Unless you understood the linkages between those dominoes, in a sense, were building a far too complex environment. There's actually three primary forces influencing modernization. There's market forces, there's IT forces, and there's technology forces. The market forces are things essentially out of our control, but which are controlling us. Things like consumerization of IT, the implementation of new technologies into our environments, whether we want to or not, because the consumers, our end users, ourselves, are bringing them in. Things like social networking. A lot of new technologies that are being driven from the outside in are forcing IT to relook at the way we build our infrastructures and we deliver services to our customers. The second is the IT drivers. IT drivers are things like consolidation, virtualization, the skills problem that many companies are running into because their aging staffs are not going to be around forever, and they've got to think about rewriting their application with new tools, with new skill sets, and things like, again, this idea of agility. One of the bigger IT drivers for years has been how can IT react very quickly to the business. Whatever new business needs are available or desired, how fast can IT do something about that? How fast can they implement new technologies and new solutions? That's driving modernization. And the third one, and probably the more detailed one, is this thing around the technologies themselves. Things like virtualization, things like the aging facilities we have in our data centers. They're making CIOs realize that their existing infrastructures, the 70% of the budget they're spending on a yearly basis just to keep the lights on, that is the biggest impediment to their success. So they need to modernize that environment in order to reduce the overall cost it takes to keep the business running. The primary benefits of modernization is actually making IT a sustained value to the business. It's continuing this push towards agility, but doing it in such a way that any single project isn't going to impact any other project. If you think about any IT project has a series of cascade effects. I mean, in many cases, we always thought the worst thing that could happen was this major project would die. We're finding out now that in many companies, one of the worst problems they have is that if a project is wildly successful. If it's wildly successful, it has a series of subsequent effects on other projects, other areas of technology that if aren't thought of in advance and played out over time, can have significant impacts on the overall environment. A good example of that is consolidation and virtualization. People have been consolidating for years. Now they're virtualizing, getting servers up to high performance, very high levels of performance, and realizing when they do that, they're bringing in larger servers, it's driving power and cooling issues, it's forcing data centers to reevaluate exactly what kind of capacities they have, and in many cases driving changes in the way the overall infrastructure is designed. The best practices, some of this stuff is fairly common sense. It is, first and foremost, inventory everything. Not just your physical assets, inventory the applications, and build a relationship map between all those applications and assets to make sure you understand what are the cascade effects. If an application or a project or a process is wildly successful, you need to understand the secondary, tertiary, and follow-on effects when that happens. So you know well in advance what you may have to do in case of success or failure. Secondly, develop this cascade list. What is going to happen, what will happen once a project is completed, once a project is 2, 3, 4 years down the road, and how those cascade effects are going to impact other applications or other projects which are going on. And lastly, build a configuration management database.